Hello, protocols, packets, and programs. So what you wanted to see good has made you blind, and what you wanted to be yours has made it mine. So don't you lock up something that you wanted to see fly? Hands are for shaking, not tying. Which means this week we talk biometrics with Andras Cser and Enza Iannopollo from Forrester Research. And then this week in the news, the government says stop using C and C++. AI makes everything better. Is it truly the bacon of software? Playing with the local file system in ChatGPT? Adrian snarks some, and John will probably snark some more. Badge in and handprint scan for Application Security Weekly.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
It's the show to learn the latest tools and techniques to understand DevOps, applications, and the cloud. Your trusted source for the latest AppSec news. It's time for Application Security Weekly.
This is episode 308, recorded on Monday, November 18th, 2024. I'm your host, Adrian Sanabria, standing in one last time for Mike Shima. And joining me is John Kinsella. How are you doing, John?
We love it. We'll take you standing in. It's a great treat. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing good. And I feel like up front I should kind of reveal the whole shirt here so it doesn't torture people. But one of my favorite shirts, unfortunately, the way my video set up is you don't get to see the whole thing. Just wanted to share that there. So coming up next is an interview with some folks from Forrester that John didn't get to join in on. I almost didn't get to join in on. We won't tell that story, but we made it happen. We got it done. And it's a really good conversation with some folks from Forrester about biometrics. So you all go enjoy that interview, and then we'll be back with you to do the news. Welcome to Application Security Weekly. Today's topic is biometrics. We're excited to have two Forrester analysts with us today. First, Andras Cser. Tell us real quick your title and what you cover at Forrester.
Sure. So my name is Andras Cser, Vice President, Principal Analyst, and I look at customer-facing identity and access management and fraud management. So really good to talk to you, Adrian. Happy to be here. Thank you. Yeah,
excited about this conversation. And we also have Enza Iannopollo with us. But please tell us your title and coverage as well.
Hello, Adrian. My name is Enza Iannopollo, as you said. I'm a principal analyst at Forrester, and I cover privacy, risk, and recently I started to look into AI governance and the new regulation for AI. I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, great to have you both. Welcome to the show. And yet, biometrics is a topic I love to cover. Something as both a security professional that's been on the enterprise side, a consultant, a penetration tester. I've always been an early adopter. So as soon as biometrics were available, I think I was using my fingerprint to sign into my PC. The old I forget the name of the company that Microsoft acquired, but had that old puck that you would set on your desk and use that to sign in back when I was using Windows XP. So it's been fascinating to see how this has progressed here. And I think one of the interesting things, that maybe we can start off with here, and I don't know exactly how you want to split up the conversation, what your expertise is. But certainly, I think the convergence of consumer technology and enterprise, the fact that we're expected to use our smartphones for work-related things, has that kind of complicated the integration of biometrics into the enterprise?
So I'll go from the technology perspective. Like my kind of area is I'm more of a techie kind of guy, and Enza, she's looking at this topic area more from the regulation privacy process and people perspectives. Okay, so from our perspective, the mobile device obviously has been a curse and a blessing, right? Rolled into one. Definitely in the consumer space, it means Touch ID, Face ID, and a lot of kind of really easy to use, much kind of lower friction, customer friction experiences, and so organizations, both retailers, merchants, as well as enterprises, or any other service provider can use facial, fingerprint, and voice biometrics pretty easily, right? So mobile devices have a camera, they have a dedicated fingerprint reader, they have a microphone. So a lot of the technology is very ubiquitous to be able to be used, for onboarding. So the challenge, obviously, between with enterprise facing deployments is, right, to what degree an organization wants to or needs to take over the employee's device, right? So if an organization is using employee owned but corporate or company managed devices, right, where is the line, right, where the employees are gonna say, hey, don't take over my device, right? I want to be able to use it for personal reasons because I paid for it. If it's a company issued device, and company managed, then it's obviously, it's a fair game. The enterprise can then pretty much do whatever they want on the device. On the consumer side of things, right? It's again, most terms and conditions imply that and get permission from the end user customer to use any biometric type of capabilities. And you usually have opt-out tools. The technology aspects are very similar, right? Maybe in the enterprise world, you have additional security kind of constraints that you may have to validate the device and make sure that an employee can only access the corporate infrastructure after using biometric authentication from a certain specific device that has enterprise mobility management or mobile device management, or is somehow in some way tied to the organization and managed by it. So that's the technology side, and Enza probably should be able to talk to the privacy and consent management side.
Yeah, definitely want to come to Enza now, like particularly in Europe with the GDPR kind of leading the way with privacy regulation there. Is this something that employees in the EU balk at, when they're asked to use biometrics or something like that? Does it help that, it seems like most modern biometrics don't store an image of your fingerprint or an image of your face. It's some kind of data points from that. Almost like a one-way hash with a password where you're not actually storing the clear text password, right? You're not actually storing the original biometric data. Does that help there, or is this still kind of a challenge, in that environment from a privacy perspective?
What I think is challenging is the use cases around it. So what you have described definitely has helped organization meet privacy requirements and still be able to do these kind of things. But there is also an understanding that the classic identity and access management use cases, you have to pay attention, are something that the regulation makes space for. And I think organizations have managed now to really meet those requirements. The problem is, and I think moving forward, we are going to see more and more of these. When you start to use biometrics in context that is not necessarily the one of identity and access management, strictly speaking. One example that I have in mind, definitely looking at the new upcoming EU AI Act, for example, is the reference to biometrics across a number of very different risk scenarios, from prohibited use cases, when you are going to use biometrics to maybe catalog people, or you are going to use specific elements, again, that have to do with biometrics to say if there is propensity to do certain things, to commit crimes. Those are prohibited use cases. Then you go into the high-risk use cases, which is using biometric for the real-time remote identification of people in a public space. You will be allowed in certain member states, not allowed in others. And then you go to the biometrics for emotion recognition. And that is, again, can be defined on a number of different risk scenarios. Requirements will apply depending on the risk case. And so this is just an example to say that really the complexity of biometrics is going to increase over time, especially from a regulatory perspective. And we really have to pay attention at the use cases, not necessarily the specific technology, but what an organization is using biometrics for. And maybe there will be time to speak about digital marketing and biometrics and some of those use cases that are pretty creepy, if you ask me.
Yeah. Certainly some of that. Before we jump into that, going back to the technical side of things, Andras, I think there were some concerns at one point. Once my fingerprint's stolen, I can't change it. It's not like a password. I can't reset it. So there's a lot of concerns about that, which never really seemed to become a problem. It's been a decade or more. We've all been using fingerprints for a while, and in fact, just for packaging, to give you more screen real estate, Apple took it away, and now is just using face. So kind of a two-part question. Are we nearing towards a standard for biometrics? Like you can use fingerprint, you can use voice, you can use face. Are we going to continue to see all the above, or is it all just going towards facial recognition? Is it kind of funneling towards that? And are there any like realistic threats against somebody being able to, I don't know, 3D print your face or use an image of your face? Are there any even practical attacks at this point now that cameras use depth perception and things like that?
Alrighty, so let's start, let's take a step back, right? So when we talk about the threat landscape here, right, there actually had been tools and solutions 5-6 years ago, and earlier, right, that actually did take the full facial image, or did take the full voice audio, or did take the full fingerprint image, right, and store it on the server side, right? So for server-side match, right, and server-side registration template storage, which means everything, you have a camera, but everything happens in the cloud or at a server. The situation has definitely become a lot better. So these days, the way these algorithms work, right, that provide a server-side match and even client-side, but server-side match is that you actually, as a user organization, when you pick an algorithm, right, and pick a product, a face or fingerprint or any kind of a biometrics product, you in essence do a number of things to never store the full facial image or the full fingerprint or the voice, right? So what happens, as you correctly pointed out earlier, is the organization is actually going to pick from, say, a complete set of 500 attributes, right, of, say, a facial image. Things like how far somebody's eyes are, right, or what is the distance between the tip of the nose and eyes, or what is the distance between the ears and the eyes, and so on. So 500 similar characteristics or parameters, and pick maybe 25 of these parameters. So there's already a randomness as to what's been picked, right? And once these parameters had been picked, basically every registration is a measuring exercise, right? You show your face to the camera, it gets sent to the server, and basically on the server side, the image is analyzed, and the distance between your two eyes and the eye and ear is actually measured. But if the organization, just for the sake of this example, never selected the width of the chin kind of measurement, that will not get measured, right? And whatever gets measured, there's, say, like I said, 25, 30 parameters, these values get normalized and then stored in an encrypted fashion on the server, right? So the image or the audio that was used to create that registration will not be stored. So and the authentication time kind of protocol is very simple. The camera takes your face, and it sends it over to the server or does the processing on the client side. But what it does, it measures those selected 25 parameters based on the image, and encrypts them and sends it over to the server. And the server then just does, like you said, a match between those encrypted values, of these measurements, right? So if, God forbid, the server-side storage of these encrypted selected parameters would get compromised, the organization has to do the following things. One, basically delete every stored template, right, and force everybody to re-register, which is painful, but it can be done. Reselect another set of 25 to 30 parameters out of this bigger pool of 500 parameters, which are different from the previous, kind of selection that was stolen, and change the encryption key of these parameters, right? So basically, there's nothing really lost other than the parameters, and there's obviously some friction. So that's one thing that is basically actually moving biometrics much more towards the security side of things and moving more secure. And then the other, so this was the first kind of topic I wanted to highlight here. The second topic is the server side versus client side conversation. Where is the decision being made? Where is the registration happening? Today's predominant thinking is that everything happens on a mobile device. There's a trusted element, secure element, and all the facial, voice, and fingerprint kind of registration happens only on the client side. And basically, the authentication, if all this works, then the mobile client, mobile app, or mobile browser only releases a certificate to the server that the user was authenticated locally using biometrics, and everything is good, and the user gets authenticated at the server based on the certificate that the client side biometrics released upon successful biometric authentication. So that is also increasing the level of security. Obviously, it's not applicable for use cases like immigration and others, but for plain old authentication use cases, this is going to be good. The third area that I want to talk about, you asked me about, are there any threats to biometrics? The biggest threat that we see these days, especially towards server-side match, which that typically tends to protect the higher value, higher risk types of transactions, are deepfakes, right? So deepfakes are pretty much, a method where, the hackers find a biometric sample, right, or find a video or an audio of a target, right? They want to, kind of steal, right, the likeness of, and then they basically have a text-to-speech or speech-to-speech algorithm, which and they paste the hackers or the bad guys, the threat actors, words on top of an audio, right, and morph the audio into the victim's kind of intonation so that it sounds like a victim, or they do lip syncing, and the video of a victim basically looks like, and it says with the lip sync whatever the hackers wanted to say. So it's really gotten to a point where there's dozens of websites out there where you can try this, like GUI.ai is something that will just readily allow you to lip sync any target's video with your own voice. So you can definitely try this out. So that is the biggest challenge these days. Vendors are working to resolve this and find liveness and detection and defenses against deepfakes.
Yeah, and I was going to ask about deep fakes and things like that. But yeah, to your point, we do have companies like Reality Defender. I think there's a few more on my list that are in that category of trying to detect these kinds of things. So yeah, very interesting. And then the only other question I had there before I come back to Enza was are we going towards just face? Are we going to continue to see fingerprint used in some cases? Iris, hand, voice?
Sure. So facial recognition, if things work out and there's no sidelight, backlight, blurry cameras, dirty cameras, and all these other things, works the easiest, right? And it can also be used in a physical access control situation much easier, right? So basically, if you have a crowd control situation where you have one camera looking over a crowd, maybe at an airport or at a terminal or immigration control or other areas, right? You can recognize many faces with one camera simultaneously. So that is definitely a big plus. Iris and retina recognition have gotten to a point that they are starting to become part of facial biometrics. In other words, you use the same sensors, you use the same cameras, very high resolution to be able to do a lot of the iris or retina recognition kinds of algorithms. Yes, there are, you can use special equipment, but really anything that requires a special sensor beyond the camera and a microphone these days is going to have a lot of limitations in its applicability. Voice is call center, right? Customer contact center, voice, call center type of situations. I would say because of deepfakes today, we are seeing a little bit of a kind of lull in the adoption of voice biometrics and voice biometrics being actually enhanced or augmented by facial biometrics as well as traditional passwordless authentication or multi-factor authentication as well.
Sure, makes sense. Yeah, and coming back to you, Enza, we're a couple of weeks after Halloween now, but I want to hear more about the creepiness of some of these use cases where we see biometrics maybe being used without our consent or with shaky consent, or what kind of trends are you seeing there, and what are you concerned about there?
That's there are two aspects to this. There is one that I think is less on the creepy side, but an interesting one that, of course, needs a lot of safeguards from a privacy security perspective, but is the use of biometrics in the context of the agents, as we call here at Forrester the idea of the digital double. So you create this consumer-owned, algorithmically driven agent that is there fundamentally to learn from the preferences of a customer, context from my digital identity, potentially using my biometrics to interact with brands. Today, we see these being this AI really what we call the assistant level. So fundamentally, the AI is going to use what learns about me to then signal to brands, what are my preferences, what are my goals, what might be some of my values. Tomorrow, this agent will become agentic and empowered. And this is where really the not only the preferences of a customer and some contextual information from their identity, but also biometrics become important, as this agent will be able to make decisions on my behalf, transact on my behalf, buy things on my behalf. And so biometrics really becoming this enabler of the agent. And so this is fascinating. Of course, there are a number of concerns. I think the FTC a few months ago issued a statement saying the use of biometrics in the context of AI or being agent or in the context of machine learning even creates a number of issues from privacy for security, but also bias, discrimination, as we said before. So a few things to be aware of, but definitely very fascinating use cases where you can see the power of biometric going beyond the classic use cases. But then there is a creepy side of things, and I have come across recently to this idea of using technology to monitor and record the biological response to stimuli in the context of digital marketing. And so is eye tracking to really see where I'm spending time. This is the world beyond preferences, right? This is the world beyond cookies. And I love the fact that we have been battling cookies. Third-party cookies, very bad. Why you track me, very bad. And now we are in a place where you're going to use my eye tracking to see where I'm going on your website, where I'm spending attention. And then I read about the galvanic skin response. You can see if I sweat watching something. You can see if my heart rate goes up watching something. And then you are going to show me an advertisement right in a moment because I might be more likely to buy something. All the way to the what they call the facial expression for emotion classification. Am I excited? Am I bored? And we have seen already a number of these cases. There was actually one that became famous here in London, used by the public transport company, public-private transport company, that really was trying to understand how passengers were feeling while waiting on the platforms. And they were using some form of emotion recognition using biometrics. And when this came out, of course, there was a big backlash. This is, something that would have required notices and a complete different explanation. Maybe some thought whether that was even appropriate to do in a public space like a station. But they said they wanted to know how people were feeling while waiting for the trains. So it's always interesting to me how we create risks for use cases that maybe are not even worth it, the risk we are creating. And so I think there is plenty as we move into this area of agent, but also this new frontier of marketing use cases. Creepiness is just there behind the corner.
And it's not surprising, right? Like I remember back in 2010 reading a book called Biology, and it's BUY-ology by Martin Lindstrom. And at least he says he was the first marketer to hook people up to like brain scans, to see what they really felt, what they really thought when watching an ad. And there are a lot of interesting discoveries, or insights from that book. And one of those, I think most people who put together surveys, certainly in the analyst industry, I don't know if you guys have to put together survey questions, for things that go. I did when I was at 451 Research, But one of the things you learn is, if you don't word the questions correctly, people tend to respond to a survey the way they think you want them to respond, not the way that they actually feel, right? So I think it's understandable, understanding that problem, that challenge, creepy from our perspective, but very understandable from the marketing perspective that, they don't want to send you ads for things that you don't want. Like they want to know how you actually feel, and connect things with you that you actually want to buy. Nobody wants to fill that lead funnel with hopes and prayers. They want real sales leads. Not a bunch of garbage in there. So am I going to be asked to agree to, give the biometrics of my smartwatch, for an app? Like how are they getting these details, I guess is the question, because if any website wants to use my camera, it's going to ask me to opt in. And if Amazon.com asks me to use my camera, I'm probably going to say no.
But this is exactly, I think, the point, Adrian, that you are going to. I think that as long as, consumers or employees, for that case, understand what happened. So, so the focus of regulation around the notices. And I know we always criticize all these privacy notices. No one reads them. No one wants them. But at the end of the day, is the means that we have today to really make sure that people understand what happens. And if they are happy, if they want for that type of targeting to happen, they can consent to it. And I think this is something we learned with consent. I remember many years ago interviewing a CMO from a US-based organization that they actually told me, we are doing hyper-personalization to a level that we never thought possible. And that was simply because now we have consent. And while not everybody consent to this kind of hyper-personalization, those people then consent actually give us a lot of permission. And I think that's the core of the conversation is permission. I try to talk to my customers all the time about writing privacy notices that make sense to the people that read them. The language that we use, the moment where we display those privacy notices, those things really make a difference. And I think that if genuinely you want your customers to understand what you're asking them, and you want to make sure that they fully understand it, you can take the right steps for that to happen. And once you have that permission, you can probably do all this kind of personalization with those customers that are happy to. And that is completely okay, I think, to do. The problem is when this happens and as a customer, you don't have a clue of what is happening.
Yeah.
I think that
No
this
transparency.
Is where, yeah.
Yeah, you need some transparency for sure. Yeah, like I'm sure, Facebook has done some creepy things to be able to serve me the ads that I see, but consistently Instagram and Facebook are probably the only platforms that consistently show me things I actually want. Like I actually buy things that show up in ads on Instagram and Facebook. Twitter, never. Random websites, that are using tracking cookies. Like all the time, I'll get shown something that I just bought. Like I just got healthcare through healthcare.gov, and I keep getting this advertisement for Alejandra, who got healthcare for $45 a month. And I don't want to hear anymore about Alexandra because I'm paying like $1,100 a month. Like I don't want to hear about her $45 cheap health insurance. But I think there's it's interesting how part of the industry is like cutting edge, and some of it is just they're just wasting their money on these ad clicks, showing me stuff that I just bought. Like that's why they have the data on it, is I already purchased it. I don't need a second snowmobile or whatever. Like I'm only going to buy one. Yeah. So as we wrap up the conversation here, I understand the Forrester Security and Risk Summit is coming up in early December. And I want each of you to give me kind of a synopsis of what you're going to be doing there. I presume you're going to be giving a talk, something like that. So tell us what you're going to be sharing there, starting with you, Enza.
Sure, of course, there is this topic about biometrics together with Andras. We are going to talk about these. I also have another session that is going to be about the AI regulation, this emerging regulation. We'll spend some time looking at what Europe is doing with the EU AI Act. Compliance or enforcement of the Act is going to start in 2025. We have some expectations about what is going to happen. And in the talk around AI, I'm going to tell a story that explains the origin of a marathon, one of the most well-known stereotype in compliance, and probably the first recorded failure of third-party risk in history. So that is going to be a fun one.
That is a great teaser for it. I wish I could be there to hear it. Andras?
Sure. So again, with Enza, we're going to be doing this talk on the biometrics front, right? So the good and bad and ugly of various biometric tools and algorithms and all the landscape, regulatory, technology landscape around this. And on my own, I'll be doing a session on generative AI in fraud management. So that's going to be a really interesting topic, how Gen AI helps all aspects of fraud management. And we're also going to be doing a panel where I'm going to be a panelist on just key trends on identity and access management. And obviously all the one-on-ones and all the hallway conversations that are there inevitably during these events. So we enjoy those a lot.
Also, we should add there are over 30 sessions. There are many, many topics we'll discuss. There is a prediction panel also on main stage. There are a lot of things happening this year, SNR Summit. So it should be a very good one to be at.
Awesome. Andras and Enza, thank you so much for joining us on Application Security Weekly today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
All right, we'll be right back in a few moments with some application security news.